You're listening to 15 Minutes, where we feature community leaders sharing what the rest of us should know but likely don't. Chad Franzen here, one of the hosts of Share Your Voice, where we talk with top-notch law firms and lawyers about what it takes to grow a successful law practice. This episode is brought to you by Gladiator Law Marketing, delivering tailor-made services to help you accomplish your objectives and maximize your growth potential. To have a successful marketing campaign and make sure you're getting the best ROI, your firm needs to have a better website and better content. Gladiator Law Marketing uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, and decades of experience to outperform the competition. To learn more, go to gladiatorlawmarketing.com, where you can schedule a free marketing consultation. My guest today is Tom Feher, the founder and CEO of Feher Law APC. His firm specializes in litigating and trying catastrophic injury, wrongful death, and employment cases throughout California. At just 40 years old, he's tried over 50 jury trials to verdict. He has been honored with CAALA's Rising Star Award in 2018 and OCTLA's Young Gun Award in 2017. Tom, it's great to have you today. How are you?
Thanks a lot, Chad. I'm doing well. How you doing?
Great. Thank you. Hey, tell me, how and when did you know that you wanted to become an attorney?
Great question. I was 5 years old when I decided or chose I wanted to be a lawyer. And the short story is I grew up playing ice hockey in Los Angeles, which is an anomaly to begin with. It's probably the product of being born from immigrant parents from Eastern Europe. So they put me on the ice when I was really, really young. And my father actually was a mechanic. His hands were always dirty. And I remember a lot of the kids' parents would show up in suits. Their fathers would show up in suits. And I asked my dad, what do they do? And he said, they're lawyers. And I just said, because their hands weren't dirty and they were in suits, I was like, I think I want to do that. And so once I said I wanted to be a lawyer, I think everybody around me, when I would say that, family members and friends, teachers, they just sort of pushed me or nudged me in that direction. And I just continued down that path, and it ended up being the right one.
Wow. So from that time until adulthood, you never wavered.
Well, no, actually I wavered, here and there. I ended up triple majoring in college and, in psychology, philosophy, and political science. And oftentimes I'll joke and say 3 BAs is just 1 BS, but I thought about grad school and potentially getting into a program that I would create, studying sort of post-genocide, post-conflict resolution in different countries, and trying to sort of heal the wounds that have arose from those conflicts. So very different idea, and it was something that I have a real interest in. I also caught a little bit of the theater bug. Even though I'm from LA, I was not really Hollywood inclined. But I got into theater in high school doing performance group improvisational shows. So I got into improv, which was actually a great tool for being a trial lawyer.
So you decided to go to law school. Take me through your journey, from law school. How did you kind of break into the legal industry?
Yeah, it's funny. You want to be a lawyer. You think you're going to be a lawyer. I go to law school, I graduate law school, and I don't even know what a lawyer does. And it's sort of tongue in cheek, but I think we use very little from what we learn in law school. If you're a trial lawyer, that is, it's very much the practice of law. And a lot of the things that you do in law school, they might be great for academia or great if you're going to be a judge, but maybe not so great if you're going to go out there and practice, or if you're going to go out there, be a trial lawyer, or have your own business. And one of the things that is really missing from law school that at least I noticed is the business side of things. Mm-hmm. And that's where you have to just go and seek out mentorships. So a big part of law school for me was finding the right mentors, finding the right people. I got involved in CAALA as a law student, which is the largest plaintiff organization in the country. I'm a board member of it now. I speak regularly for them. So finding those things, finding the mentors and the things that you want to do was a big part of my law school journey. And I sort of found a way to spend a little bit less time studying, which maybe that's not the best advice for some people, but I learned how to study the outlines and prepare for the exam at the end of class so I could do a lot of things that I enjoyed a little bit more, like join the trial advocacy team or the negotiation team. And I found that to be closer to the practice of law than sitting there and reading cases and then try to put them in a certain, context for the professor.
You mentioned that you kind of had an interest in theater, and I know you are a successful trial lawyer. Did the two go together at all?
100%. I mean, being a trial lawyer, I feel like there's being a lawyer in general. There's so many intersections of different disciplines, and maybe that's a critique of our education system, is that there's not enough cross section or cross reference between disciplines. I really find that things are interdisciplinary, and sort of creating these silos can become problematic. I think one of the foundational cornerstones of improv coincide or dovetail really nicely with trial, and that is when you're doing improv, you're constantly in the mode of yes and, meaning you're accepting what's happening at the moment. It forces you to become present, and that's something that I think is critical as a trial lawyer. Is you can't go in having your own agenda and trying to manipulate people or trying to get people to do things you want. You have to be present and accept what the jury, the judge, the witness is giving you at that moment and work with it.
Do you think that your background in that gave you an advantage? I talked about kind of the recognition that you received at a young age, at a relatively young age. Do you think that gave you an advantage, or do you think most of these people have kind of realized what you just said?
I've had so many disadvantages. I don't know if it gave me an advantage. I mean, there's so many things I had to work on to become an effective trial lawyer and being a good advocate. It helps. So I think the more that you have an open mind, the more that you do and work on, it's going to give you an advantage. But being a trial lawyer, the skill set is a depreciating asset. So if you're not using it, you're losing it. Just like anything in life, really, but ever more so as a trial lawyer, it's one of those skill sets you have to keep fresh. And as you know, most cases don't go to trial. So I'm regularly teaching or practicing or working on cases even when I'm not in trial.
So how did your firm, Feher Law, how did that come about?
I was I was a trial lawyer. I grew up like that. I think my first case was in my late 20s, and I dedicated my life and craft to sort of developing those skills. And then I was with the firm for 8 years, and I'm very loyal, and I give everything to somebody, and in relationships and the things that I do, I give everything. And it came to the point where I felt like I had a scratch I needed to itch. And my father, I guess you could say, was an entrepreneur too, or had his own business as an auto mechanic. And back before you took your cars to, the dealership or wherever you purchased them, there was mechanics out there. And he was an old school, handshake, honest, blue collar, business guy. And I felt that I needed to try to see if I could open up my own firm and grow it more in line with the vision that I have, which is really to be there for all of the consumers who don't have access to a good lawyer. There are tons of lawyers out there, and unfortunately, consumers are unaware of what makes a good lawyer versus a bad lawyer. They see a billboard, or they see somebody that's marketing a lot, and the assumption is that must be a good lawyer or a competent lawyer, and oftentimes that's not the case. And so I felt like I had a duty almost to start my own practice and to reach out to the people in my community and be a lawyer for them.
So kind of given that, how would you describe, the core mission and approach of Feher Law?
It's people first. And I mean that in every sense. It's not only the people that we serve and represent, it's the people within our team too. For me, it's really important that people feel good about what they're doing. They believe in what they're doing. And really, you're going to find out fast whether this is the right place for you or not. We see it almost as a calling. The way that we help people and serve people. The insurance companies out there are not really in the business of paying out claims. If they were, you wouldn't need lawyers, right? If people did something wrong and they paid for it, whatever they did wrong, you wouldn't need lawyers or a judicial system, right? Because you'd say, okay, that person took care of it. That's just not how it exists. So you have to have sort of a belief in what we're doing because it's not easy work. It's not a 9 to 5. I work all the time and I'm sort of never not working. So it's a commitment to something bigger. And I think the people in our team, the people that make up our team, they feel the same way.
What would you say are some of the most challenging types of cases that you guys specialize in?
That's a tricky question because as you say that, I feel like a lot of the cases we have, or most of them, have something challenging
Hmm.
about them. And if a case doesn't have a lot of challenges, it usually doesn't get litigated. It usually doesn't get tried, right? The cases that are not challenging are going to resolve the vast majority of the time, unless you have just a really bad adjuster or defense lawyer or the house counsel or somebody on the other side that's really not recognizing the risk of the case.
Hmm.
I'd say, and I think almost any trial lawyer would probably agree with this sentiment. The toughest cases out there are going to be where you have somebody who's in a very seemingly minor looking motor vehicle collision and they've got some catastrophic or serious injuries. It's very hard for the average person and myself included to look at an incident. And I guess I should start from my perspective, but you look at a case and you're like, how did this person end up with a spine injury when they got bumped, or it looks like they got bumped, right? It was just a very minor type of fender bender, these types of words. But we know that people are not motor vehicles, they're not made of steel, and we know that they are vulnerable to injuries, and spine is one of the most vulnerable body parts to injuries. But getting that point across to a jury, it can be very challenging. And that's a testament as to why some of the greatest trial lawyers aren't trying those cases, on a regular basis.
I know that you guys do catastrophic injury, wrongful death, and employment cases. So I expected you to say that those maybe were the most challenging, but you said, maybe an accident that looks minor, but maybe the result of the accident wasn't minor. What kind of advice? I've probably been in accidents like that, and I never called an attorney. What kind of advice would you give to people who are in those kinds of accidents? Should they just assume that they're going to be done right, or should they assume not, or see what happens?
I would say anybody that's involved in any type of motor vehicle collision, it's better to be safe than sorry. And from a legal perspective, that means go to the doctor if you're feeling a little bit off. The sooner you do that, the better, because you're getting documentation. And that's important because that's what the insurance companies rely on. Is they say, well, if you were hurt, why didn't you go to the doctor? Why didn't you go to the emergency room? And I'm also the type of person that if I am hurt, I'm the last person that wants to go to the doctor. I'm like, it's gonna go away. But the problem with that is symptoms may get worse over time. And then what the insurance company or whoever it is on the defense, whether it's a governmental entity or insurance company, they're going to say, well, if your injuries are that serious, why didn't you go to the doctor for a week right after the incident or within a few days? So really documenting what happened, not only by taking pictures and reporting it to your insurance company, but documenting the symptoms you're feeling, however minor they are, right? Because if you go to your doctor and say, look, I'm feeling off, I'm shaking up, my back is sore, I've got a headache, these kind of things, at least it's documented there. So in the event it gets worse, you've got it set up right away that you took it seriously.
So if let's say you grew up, your parents had an insurance agent, you became an adult, took over, you have that insurance agent now. Should you assume that they're going to do right by you?
Well, the insurance companies, they break up, right? They break up who's in charge of what. So the person that's selling you the policy isn't the one that's going to be, paying the policy. But you have instances where your own insurance company, I recommend everybody get underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage, because right now in California, the only requirement is that if a driver hits you, they only have to have a $15,000 insurance policy. So you get hit by somebody who only has $15,000 in insurance coverage, but your injuries are significantly more than that, and the harm that's caused you is significantly more than that. Well, you're not going to be able to get more. I mean, generally speaking, you're not going to be able to get more than the $15,000 unless you have underinsured motorist coverage to supplement that, or you do what's called opening a policy, which is a whole other can of worms, or you could talk about bad faith and how insurance companies work. So your agent's never going to be the one that's really dealing with you, and really whether your claim gets paid out is going to be, determined by the insurance carrier for the other driver that hit you.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, of course.
I will say this though, this is something that this is a bigger piece of advice, that cases generally will settle or resolve for greater value if you litigate them. So one of the differences between a firm like ours, which litigates and tries cases, is we're going to get greater value on our cases because the insurance company knows that we will take it to trial. So there's a difference there. And the insurance company, just like people that watch sports and rate and rank different players on, that they're watching, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, whatever. The insurance companies are doing the same thing with attorneys. They know if you're the type of attorney that's going to settle for less than the case is worth. They know if you're the type of attorney that litigates cases or that tries cases. They have all of that information in their database. So they have people pegged right from the get-go.
Very interesting. So I know your firm, you said it is a kind of a people first mentality. How do you ensure that, your clients receive that kind of impeccable service?
We're constantly checking up with our clients. That's something that's really, really important to us. And I listen to some other people that are doing intakes or that are talking to their clients or they're signing up cases. And oftentimes I never hear them say, "How are you doing?" And it's mind blowing to me. It's so important. Just if somebody tells me that, I mean, you're obviously coming to me, whether it's an injury or whether it's something that happened with your job and you may have lost your job. I mean, that's one of the scariest things. I couldn't imagine not having a job or not being able to work and put food on the table. That's incredibly scary, and it's not like it's getting any easier for folks in the U.S. So I'm asking somebody how they're doing. I mean, and I think it's just leading with empathy from the start. We have people who have suffered brain injuries or emotional injuries, and someone might say, "Well, this person seems like they're rude," or "I don't understand why they're behaving that way," or whatever it may be, or they're telling you one thing and then saying another. And I said, "Well, what if they have a brain injury, it's affecting their memory?" Well, that's what's going on. Or if they have a brain injury, there's people that will just cry uncontrollably. And it's not because of some psychological issue per se. It's because they've got a brain injury that's affecting that part of their brain. So I think being empathetic, understanding, where people are coming from and their story. I think that's one of the most important things, is understanding their story. So people might look at a case that we have and they might wonder, how is it possible that for somebody who suffered a broken leg, you're able to get a $1.5 million verdict? How are you able to do that, Tom? And it's not because there's $1 million in medical bills. There's no medical bills. It's a broken leg for an elderly woman. And it's by understanding their story. And I'll give you a quick little example just based on that case alone. We had a woman who had end-stage renal failure. She was on dialysis. She was demented. She was an amputee of one of her lower extremities, bedridden, and she was being transported to and from dialysis in a non-emergency medical transportation vehicle. In other words, it's not an ambulance. And they did not strap her in correctly. And by not doing that, she fell out of her chair and broke her femur of her good leg, of the legs she had. Mm. And I asked myself at first, well, what are the damages? Because the leg healed. She was healed. And I went to go visit her and spend time with her and her children at the home she was staying. And one of the things I noticed is that every time a nurse came up to her bed, every time I came up to her bed, or one of her children came up to her bed, or grandchildren, she would flinch, almost like if you've seen a dog in a shelter or a kitten in a shelter that's been abused, right? Mm-hmm. And they're fearful. And what I realized was they didn't just break her leg, they broke her trust. And for a dependent adult, trust is everything. They have every ounce of independence that they can have left, right? Because if you're dependent on all these people and you don't trust them to treat you well and turn you over and change you, your quality of life diminishes even more. And that was the story behind that case. And so with every case, whatever the injury is, There is a story there beyond just a broken neck or a surgery or a loss of a limb. There's so much more there. And we do everything possible to learn that story. If it means hanging out with our clients at their house, spending time, eating dinner with them, getting to know their family and friends, we live and breathe our clients' stories.
Do you find that because of that, you maintain kind of a long-term relationship with the clients?
That is one of the things. We have clients that, they stay with us, and it's a little different, right? When you're doing injury or employment law, it's not like a repeat business. We hope not, right? We hope people don't have to use us again. So we are always in contact, always staying in touch with people, seeing how they're doing. We end up being friends. We'll have little parties for our clients, things like that. So it's nice to always hear from them and see that they're doing well.
I know you have a no win, no fee policy. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
It's absolutely it's nothing uncommon for injury lawyers or even for employment lawyers. We're putting our own skin in the game in all of these cases. So if I take a case to trial, I'm investing probably anywhere from 100 to 200,000 or more of our money. That's not from the bank or anything like that. But aside from just us investing the time and then also the money in representing the people that we serve, if we lose, we don't charge anything. Everything is done on a contingency basis, meaning we're working for you for free up until the settlement or the resolution. So we only get paid on the back end. So every case is a potential risk for everyone. So if we don't get you the money, you don't pay us or owe us anything.
Would you say that most attorneys that you consider, bringing in as part of the firm, already embody the kind of the trust, loyalty, and empathy ethos, or do you have to be pretty selective?
I think you have to find the right fit. So I mean, when we're interviewing people, there may be, yeah, there's people they're always gonna tell you things, right? But then you find out whether they walk the walk. And that's okay. And our firm is not for everybody. And there's some people that, fit better in a different context. So if you don't have that ethos, you're not gonna fit here. And that's, again, I think that's okay. People have to find the right fit. And we tell people up front, this is a two-way commitment. And so if it doesn't work for you, that's okay. Let us know. And same way, if it doesn't work for us, we'll let you know real fast.
When you first started your firm, you talked about how you kind of recognize, like, I'm just learning kind of, educational type stuff, maybe theory, law theory, not real world, especially running a business. Were there some things that really jumped out at you and surprised you? I know you sought out mentorship in that regard, but were there still kind of some things that were like, oh yeah, I didn't think about this?
This may be a bit cynical, but maybe you don't realize just how much of what you don't want to be a part of exists out there. And I think that's probably true in every industry. I don't think it's particular to the law, whether you want to get into finance or sports or whatever. There are always people that it's better to avoid and not do business with. And I think that's just something that maybe if you're just getting started, or maybe if you are naive, or if you wear your heart on your sleeve, like I did and do, that could be. And like I said, my dad was a handshake kind of guy, and sure enough, two guys that worked for him took advantage of him and were stealing from him because he was just an honest, blue collars, straight up, just handshake kind of guy, and thought that's how the world works for the most part. And unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. So I think one of the biggest lessons you can learn is just, hey, some things may go wrong, and you got to keep going, and you learn from your mistakes and who to work with and not work with, and just keep your eyes open.
I have one more question for you, but first, tell me how people can find out more about Feher Law.
Best way to find out about us is on our socials. So Instagram, Facebook. You can learn about us on there. Our website, www.feherlaw.com. feherlawfirm.com, and Feher is not spelled like you think it would be. It's Feher. You can Google me and find out all sorts of stuff about me. If you DM me, I check our socials, so I'm always happy to talk to people directly. Message me, email me. My email is just Tom, Tom at feherlawfirm.com. I try to make myself available to anyone who's got questions.
Last question for you. I know you're a successful trial attorney. You mentioned maybe there's a gap between the real world and law school. What advice could you give an aspiring lawyer, maybe who's just about to finish law school, on what could you tell them that they might not have learned in law school that would really help them, maybe especially when it comes to being a trial lawyer?
There's so much I would want to say, because I feel like I've learned so much about what it takes to be a trial lawyer. And I don't want to just give somebody some basic platitudes or things that you hear all the time, but I feel like I'm going to anyway. And sometimes you need to be reminded of these simple things. I would say if you're really hungry to be a trial lawyer, a lot of people say that they want to do that. It takes an incredible amount of dedication and work. And I think the best things that we do or can do is to do something that we're really passionate about and that we really love. And I wanted to be a trial lawyer so bad that I dedicated, when I say I dedicated my life, I was in trial when I got engaged to my wife. And then I pawned her off to my mom to hang out so I could go prep my client for trial. Or my wife and I went on vacation over New Year's, and I had to leave her and fly back to Los Angeles on a red eye to start a trial on January 2nd because the judge wouldn't move the case, even though the holiday was the day before. So you have to commit to this, and in order to really commit to something, I think you got to love doing it. And I love being a trial lawyer. So if you don't love it, that's okay. It just might not be for you, but do something you love.
Sure. Yeah. Great advice. Hey, Tom, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks for all of your honest insights and thoughts and stories. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Chad. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So long, everybody. Thanks for listening to 15 Minutes. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.